Hello again, America. Recently, over this weekend, this Saturday to be precise, Gun Owners of America encouraged the Firearms Appreciation Day, in which we, the people, marched on our state capitals, attending events. We went to our gun shows, we went to our gun stores, and we went to our ranges to support our Second Amendment rights. To all of you who did this, I salute you. I'm very proud of you. Now, this is actually the second shooting of this video. For the first one went a little long and caused corruption on my memory card. So I'm going to break this into two parts. This will be the reason why we can't exactly light our celebratory cigars just yet, why we must continue our pressure and must continue our fight. This video will cover our executive orders. This is part 1. It will cover executive orders 1 through 12. Without further ado, let us continue. Alright, I will give an example toward and explain every executive order signed. Make no mistake, the executive order signing and the speech beforehand in front of those children was nothing more than posturing by our president. Our president, who has had a long-standing history of being anti-Second Amendment, anti-First Amendment, anti-gun, anti-free speech. Let us get to matters at hand. Executive Order Number 1. Issue a presidential memorandum to require federal agencies to make relevant data available to federal background check system. Well, here's the problem with this. It is so broadly worded that this allows for abuse of power. Issue a presidential memorandum requiring federal agencies to make relevant data available to the federal background check system. Who considers what's relevant data? It isn't me, it isn't you, it is not our senators nor our governors. Basically, it is whoever the president assigns the task, and rest assured he will assign anti-gun delegates upon this task. They will decide what is relevant data. Here's the problem with it. Anything and everything could be relevant data. With the fact that we have to face 5 more years of warrantless wiretaps and communications spying on all levels, be it internet, phone, SMS service messages, text messages, we're going to be observed constantly. My answer to this, as these people will make anything and everything relevant, it's time we host a bit of a blackout on data. If you got to communicate a message, do it face to face. Do it through the Postal Service. Do it through means that you know are secure. This act that he signed with the first executive order of the 23 is basically a very not fluidly worded way to cover up the fact that it is data mining. Highly immoral and dangerous task. Number 2. Address unnecessary legal barriers, particularly pertaining to Health Insurance and Portability and Accountability Act, which may prevent states from making information available to the background check system. Yet again, this is data mining. Not only is this data mining, but this act gives the president and anyone he assigns to the task carte blanche to ignore 20,000 plus firearms laws which exist on our books pre-crisis. It also gives him carte blanche to ignore the laws that were passed post-crisis. This allows our president free rein to act like essentially the Chicagoland mobster, except this time the laws being broken are being done in the name of the government instead of in the name of Al Capone. This is illegal, immoral, unjust, and unconstitutional. We must face this fact. Number 3, improve incentives for states to share information about the information with the background check system. This translates into legalized extortion and bribery towards states so that they must provide data for the data mining system. In short, our president has not only gone into omerta-style mafioso thuggery, but apparently he's wanting to institute basically a United States version of the German Stasi. This is highly, highly regrettable. Flagrant abuse of power given way by heavy-handed and flowery tone, heavy-handed motions and flowery tones instead of actual legal justice. What we're facing here is rather severe, but as I have little time, we will continue on. We will push forth. Number 4, direct the Attorney General to review categories of individuals prohibited from firearms ownership and make sure that dangerous people are not slipping through the cracks. Well, on the face value of this, a review is a review is a review. That's not a problem. The problems are that this review won't be treated as just a review. It will be used to recommend expansions on the encroachment of our Second Amendment rights. We'll come back to this when we go further down the list on one particularly shocking executive order that was passed. But suffice to say, it is rather disturbing. Number 5. Propose rulemaking to give law enforcement the ability to run a full background check on an individual before returning a seized gun. This is mine. At the moment, it is safe. Firearm is safe. We'll treat it as such. If this were stolen from me, this is still my property. If recovered, it should be returned to the original owner. That is both the spirit and the letter of the law. Requiring me to go through another background check for my own paid, tax-paid, and possessed property is immoral, bordering on illegal, and a waste of taxpayer money. Me having to do a background check on what is already known, not assumed, but known to be mine or yours is highly controversial. Whether it be a firearm, cigar, pillow, whatever happens to be at hand. They are basically saying that any stolen property, not just firearms, because they will push this further, any stolen property must require a federally mandated background check to prove that it's yours, even though the proof is already there. Well, this is a problem because it allows for seizure. What I mean is, say that your refrigerator was stolen. Well, until the background check is passed by whatever means they set for it, whatever goals they set for it, that's government property. That is basically saying, this is my property. It was stolen from me. It's now in the government's hands. So it went from out of my control into a thief's hands, into government thieves' hands. They can decide on a menial factor whether this is yours or not after it's been stolen. Basically, if they want your gun, and they've recovered it from a theft, by all rights and grounds, until you pass that background check, which they can set the requirements for the passing or the failure of that check, and they're going to set it rather high. They're going to turn that into a form of confiscation of firearms. They're going to turn that into legalized governmental theft. Mark my words on that. Number 6. Publish a letter from the BATFE to federally licensed gun dealers providing guidance on how to run background checks for private sellers. Alright. before I started making these videos, I was a seller of firearms, federally licensed through another company to execute the sales of firearms via a Form 4473. It's a job I took very seriously. I obeyed and maintained all laws. I'm sorry, but there are questions on the 4473 which make it impossible using the NICS background system for a felon, or what the government deems as unfit to own firearms, to buy one. What I mean by this: on the background check they ask, are you a felon? Have you ever used drugs? Have you ever been convicted of a violent crime misdemeanor? Have you ever been convicted of stalking? Are you under any can't talk. Have you ever given up United States residency? Have you ever given up citizenship? Have you ever been dishonorably discharged, i.e. committed a felony, from the United States military? Well, that automatically puts you into debarred from owning firearms, so I don't even have to do a background check once I see the answer to that, if answered properly. If answered improperly and they're trying to lie, well, the NICS system, National Instant Criminal Search, criminal background search to be precise, but they never abbreviate the B. Well, that data will stack against the data that's on the paper. And it's a very good check. And there have been times I've had to deny sales because of perjury. Basically, when you sign a 4473, that can be held accountable in any court of law. Any act of perjury upon that counts as an act of perjury upon the court of law. That's a felony. So if you commit that felony, not only are you not getting your gun, but I can guarantee you, you're going to face legal ramifications. That is why sales via 4473 are pretty much airtight. But you're basically telling me that apparently the 4473 isn't airtight and that I must go through further training. I'm sorry, but that violates not only the spirit but the letter of the law when it comes to firearm sales. Try again, Mr. President. Number 7, launch a national safe and responsible gun ownership program. We've got 2 already, one of which has been debarred from teaching at schools, and that would be the NRA's Eddie Eagle program. Very solid program. Teaches gun safety to the youth. Highly recommend it. Needs to be replaced back into action. The second is a non-profit organization known as Appleseed. I highly espouse what Appleseed does. It's a great way for people, both young and old, to learn responsible, safe shooting practices as well as marksmanship. As a non-profit organization, it wastes no taxpayer dollars. They treat everyone with respect. Why do we need a governmentally paid for, via our own tax dollars, program when we have 2 excellent programs that our own government seems to want to fight? More on that later. Probably in part 2. Number 8, review safety standards for gun locks and gun safes. Last I checked, and this is under the Consumer Product Safety Commission, last I checked, gun locks and gun safes, regardless of their manufacturer, are not unsafe. No, make no mistake. This executive order is to place mandates on we the populace that our firearms, even if safe, must be locked away at all times. I'm sorry, but that is not for the government to decide. That is for the end user to decide. This firearm, when loaded, sits by my bedstand. This is my defense against home invasion or potential burglary. Well, if it's locked away, unloaded in a safe, then it's not particularly useful for protecting my home, my property, myself, and anyone who resides within this domicile at the time. Essentially, it's disarmament via proxy. A very disturbing and disgusting thing. Number 9, issue a presidential memorandum to require federal law enforcement to trace guns recovered in criminal investigations. Not only is this redundant and insulting to law enforcement, who traces stolen guns anyway through the BATFE and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, but it also has a rather malign twist. A gun cannot be traced nationwide without registration. Most of our states do not have registration. We have, basically, when I purchased this gun, I have the 4473 at the original seller, and I have my own personal records. I have all of my serial numbers recorded. If something is stolen, whether it be a firearm or one of my TVs or a computer or a camera, or even my tripod, which I'm using right now, the serial numbers are recorded. That means that this is known to be my own private property. Here's my problem with registration. All registration leads to confiscation. If this particular firearm that I hold right here is registered upon a national registry, and that means not only do they have the information on it, but should a law change, they know exactly where it is so they can confiscate it. I take serious disagreement with this law. I will not register a single firearm because that is a surefire way to give them the tools they need for confiscation. No thank you, Mr. President. Number 10. Release a Department of Justice report analyzing information on lost and stolen guns and make it widely available to law enforcement. Well, this is what the Department of Justice was supposed to be doing in the first place, so this strikes me as a waste of taxpayer dollars for some new, ever so lovely legislation. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. Number 11, nominate a new BATFE director. This is heavy-handed. It basically just gives an illusion that our president is actually doing something when really he's just sitting around with his thumb up his butt on the good days and fighting against our constitutional rights and liberties on the worst of days. Number 12, this will be the last one for this particular video. More will come in part 2. Part 2 will be issued same day as part 1. I'm just splitting them up to avoid corruption on the memory card. Provide law enforcement, first responders, school officials with proper training for active shooter situations. Absolutely wonderful. This is one that I can actually back. But it does come at a caveat. Medics, police officers, school teachers, principals, anyone who deals with the public in a large-scale scenario must be taught what to do in case of an emergency. We spent millions upon millions of dollars eons ago in the anti-nuclear, civil defense programs on duck and cover. A little good that would do. That would have done nothing. Nuclear bomb's nuclear bomb. You're not going to change the fact that blast, heat, concussive force, fallout, and radiation, ducking behind a chair or a desk or a locker is not going to do you any good. You're already dead. But this is something that means something. Okay, we're going to direct people who need it how to use firearms and what to do in a case of a particularly nasty scenario. My problem with it is twofold. Alright, the media echo tank called the Vice President of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, quote unquote, insane, stupid, and tone deaf for suggesting this very bill. It's no longer a bill, it's now an executive order, it's now law, but for suggesting this. But yet, when the president suggests it and puts it into writing as an executive law, executive order, apparently he's a forward-thinking genius. Well, this clearly espouses that our media is a hollow echo tank bought and paid by the anti-gun coalitions. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but you're basically taking into action what Wayne LaPierre set forth, and you're claiming it as your own ideal. You're paying your anti-gun coalition, may not be directly linked to you, but your anti-gun coalition is paying the media to downplay, insult, degrade, and demonize all of us gun owners, the Gun Owners of America Foundation, Second Amendment Foundation, as well as the NRA. But yet, when the same idea is introduced via your anti-gun coalition, apparently it's the best thing since sliced bread. Hero worship, base idolatry, it's all there. It's all in black and white, directly in front of our faces. Alright. I will continue this in part 2. See you soon, America.